is the transponder, so you can find me. I should let you get back to sleep.
Good night, Walter.
Good night, my son.
As with J.J. Abrams' other hit TV program, Lost, after the end credits we hear and see the words, the name of the production company. In Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits, the character representing evil or the devil talks about gaining knowledge and becoming a god. He goes on to suggest that the microchip and the silicone revolution can and will be used for evil purposes.
Yes. Are you unable to escape from this fortress?
It's a good question. Why have I let the Supreme Being keep me here in the fortress of ultimate darkness?
Because you...
No, shut up. I'm speaking rhetorically.
Oh, of course.
I let him keep me here in order to lull him into a false sense of security.
Ah, clever. Clever.
When I have the map, I will be free, and the world will be different, because I have understanding.
Understanding of what, Master?
Of digital watches. And soon I shall have understanding of video cassette recorders and car telephones. And when I have understanding of them, I shall have understanding of computers. And when I have understanding of computers, I shall be the Supreme Being. God isn't interested in technology. He knows nothing of the potential of the microchip or the silicon revolution. Look how he spends his time. 43 species of parrots. Nipples for men.
Slugs.
Slugs! He created slugs. They can't hear, they can't speak, they can't operate machinery. I mean, are we not in the hands of a lunatic?
Sir, look!
If I were creating a world, I wouldn't mess about with butterflies and daffodils. I would have started with lasers. 8 o'clock, day one. Sorry.
In Season 5, Episode 20 of The Simpsons, The Boy Who Knew Too Much, Principal Skinner is frustrated at the inconclusive findings after investigating Bart's suspicious excuse note. Skinner sees electronic tracking implants as the solution to his problem.
As I write with, signed Mrs. Simpson. You were right to be suspicious, Edna. To the crime lab. Inconclusive. I wish more students had agreed to these electronic tracking implants. We only had one volunteer.
In Universal Soldier Regeneration, Commander Topov wants to guarantee the safety of himself and his men. This is done by implanting microchips in them all. This sequel, written by former Mossad agent Viktor Ostrovsky, features both Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, the actors from the original 1992 blockbuster.
I have to guarantee the safety of my men, as well as my own.
It'll be taken care of.
So you want to wait? Then I guess the wire transfers can wait as well. What's the hurry, right?
Miles.
Yes, Doctor.
The General's son is growing anxious. He'd like to be microchipped this instant. It can't possibly wait.
I'm nobody's son anymore, Doctor. It is Commander Topov.
Oh, right.
I've done it to myself. It does hurt a little bit now.
Maybe for you.
Failsafe is active, sir.
Satisfied?
No, my men.
Fine. Round them up.
There is another example that deserves a special mention because of its context and the implicit suggestion within the overall message. In the opening scene of Conspiracy Theory, taxi driver Jerry Fletcher, played by Mel Gibson, talks to his passengers about various conspiracies, which happens to include a mention of George H.W. Bush's famous New World Order speech.
George Bush knew what he was saying when he said New World Order. Remember those three little words, New World Order?
It is a big idea, a new world order.
At one point, he is talking to a lady with a dog about the chipping of pets for identification and tracking purposes. He goes on to make the point that
The chip for identification so they can track down an animal anywhere he's at, you'll insert it under the dog's skin, and it's kind of like an identification thing. I mean, it's only a small, logical step until they start putting it in us and our children. And then, before we know it, my God, they'll probably come with the pretext to make our... Oh, sure, yeah. Hey, is that one of those new hundreds? You know, where they change...
in the movie, Fletcher is made out to be a kook in a number of ways, despite the fact that he is actually a victim of a very real CIA mind control program called MKUltra. Perhaps the most obvious tactic used to make the lead character appear kooky is the title of the movie itself, a derogatory label repeatedly used by the media to describe and hence to ridicule any hypothesis which contradicts the authorized version of events, whether or not the authorized version has been proven to be false, and whether or not the alternative hypothesis is based on verifiable facts. This kind of manipulative propaganda technique betrays the actual purpose of the mainstream media. The term conspiracy theorist is also used by the professional shills, often as a synonym for someone who is either hopelessly naive or mentally ill or both, as though at some point in the recent past, organized large-scale conspiracies suddenly and inexplicably became impossible. Of course, the term conspiracy theory is never used to describe one of the government's own conspiracy theories, reported to us by the dominant propaganda arm of Bernays' invisible government, mainstream TV news, because that would negate the general public perception that has been put into place over the last few decades, largely since November 22nd, 1963, that a conspiracy theory is wrong because it was not reported by the mainstream media, as opposed to a rejection based on any kind of analysis of the information presented. If this general perception was not sufficiently in place, then President George W. Bush may not have been able to get away with the following noticeably ambiguous statement addressed to the United Nations and anyone willing to listen on November 10th, 2001.
We must speak the truth about terrorism. Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
The list of examples of mind farming given here is not exhaustive. It does not include the various TV news items, for example, which are essentially advertisements disguised as pseudo-debates on behalf of the viewer or consumer. But there are enough to make the point. We are being propagandized to participate in a diabolical agenda. To say that this agenda does not have our best interest at heart could be the understatement of the millennium, even at this early stage. We can expect more of the same from an increasing number of sources, as the aforementioned invisible government attempts to persuade us, first, that being chipped is desirable, and then, normal. This would also increasingly imply that not to be chipped is to be abnormal, which can be unbearable for some. We have already seen a globally recognized hero being chipped, namely Bond, James Bond. It's only a matter of time until the non-fictional world of celebrity, if such a thing exists, gets involved. One endorsement from a David Beckham or a Beyoncé, and or any of the other mega prostitutes out there, and being chipped will suddenly become cool, or perhaps double plus good. The power of celebrity nowadays is such that a lot of young people imitate the stars they have chosen to follow. Some fans of celebrities will dress like them, cut their hair like them, talk like them, and behave like them. It isn't difficult to predict that fans of certain celebrities could be nudged towards being chipped like them too. After all, there's no point in creating the collective insanity that is the cult of celebrity worship if you're not going to use the more reliable stars to spellbind their adoring public when called upon. The more people agree to be chipped, the more likely it is that the economic and technological infrastructure of the world will eventually operate on the assumption that citizens are chipped. At the time of writing, people can go to certain clubs and pay for things with an implanted chip, which is the first step. The obvious next step is simply a gradual increase in the number of places that accept this method of payment, and then we are potentially moving towards the troubling situation of only having the option of using an implanted chip to pay for goods and services. The introduction of a cashless society would clearly be another unwelcome milestone to look out for, and some recent articles from different countries suggest that it could be well on its way. We've all managed to land in a critical period in history, and our actions will affect the outcome. It can be easy to forget that all of us do actually have power, when we are constantly reminded that we have no say in the machinations of the New World Order. But we do. This is not my agenda, and it's not your agenda. In fact, almost everybody who could be affected by it will never meet the people who are responsible for it, or even know their names. But to pull this agenda off, they need us to go along with it. The successful implementation of the Human Microchipping Agenda, like every other aspect of our increasingly apparent enslavement, necessitates the acquiescence of the majority. The powers that be need the people to comply. And legally speaking, silence connotes consent. We must not be silent. We have been handed the bread and circuses that surround us for the specific purpose of distracting us, and it's worked. We willingly give away our power, wasting our own energy being hypnotized by the TV, playing video games, watching sports, reading the latest bestseller, voluntarily giving our time away to be numbed and dumbed down. Imagine the effect of diverting just a fraction of a percent of the totality of the wasted energy worldwide into the fight for the freedom of all. Even the most diehard sports fan would be somewhat reluctant to put forward the argument that sports are more important than freedom. Every one of us has an individual voice to claim back and utilize. And when the people come together, united in a common cause, the collective voice can become an almighty roar that just keeps growing louder and louder. When that unified voice is loud enough, it cannot and will not be ignored, and we the people can become an unstoppable force. We have the power to make that happen. We have the power to help other people realize what's at stake here. We the people have the power to tap into the millions of man-hours that are wasted away every day of the year and to put it to use fighting for our freedom before it's too late. We have the power to demand freedom. We must use that power before it's too late. As political activist Mario Savio said,
"There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all."
Perhaps later on we can look into who owns and runs the machine, and whether or not we as humans are willing to tolerate that particular arrangement. Until that time, we all have the power to insist that we the people will not be chipped.
Times are hard, times have changed, don't you say? But I keep holding on to you. It's hard to keep the faith alive day to day, leaning on the strength I found in you. You're the hope of all the earth. You are my hope. You are my strength. You're everything, everything I need. You are my hope. You are my life. You are my hope. You are my hope. Far beyond what I can see or comprehend, etching your exam.